Longtime author Rico Lamoureux moved from the Philippines to South Dakota after the pandemic eased and promptly fell in love with the story of Deadwood. He initially chose South Dakota due to no lockdowns and the rich Western history. Rico is a longtime crime novel author, and the historical characters of Wild Bill, Calamity Jane, Sheriff Bullock, and Bad Guy Al Swearengen seem like a natural to him. This is where the inspiration for Deadwood Bound started. In much the same vein as stories about Tombstone, Arizona, and Dodge City, Deadwood Bound has everything a reader could ask for, along with an additional helping of intrigue. Sit back and enjoy Rico's perspective on Deadwood as he prepares for his first visit to Deadwood and Deadwood reads on this edition of the Cowboy Up Podcast. Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast. This is where talk is all about the West, the spirit of the West, and especially the people and personalities that make up the West. We are brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and Cowboy Spirit Radio Productions. Okay, Russell, it's May. I love May. I just adore May because no matter what time you go outside, it is just about perfect.
Yeah, no, I love May. I love May too. It's pretty dependable.
Yeah, very dependable, I'd say.
Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of rain, but that's bad on one side, good on the other. But anyway, it's good to see you.
Okay, it's good to see you, and I'm excited about our topic today. We've got an author coming in. His name is Rico Lamoureux. Rico, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, and he wrote a book called Destination Deadwood, and I will tell you, everybody I talk to, now that I get to work with White Stallion, they ask me how much I know about two big topics, Tombstone and Deadwood. Well, I know more about Tombstone now than I ever did, and I don't know a lot about Deadwood. So I'm interested to see because he wrote a book about it, but I want to find out first because he's a recent immigrant to South Dakota, I guess about 4 years, and he moved there from the Philippines. And some of the reasons behind him moving from the Philippines and what he had to endure there are pretty dramatic, I think. Pretty dramatic. Would you agree with that assessment, Rico?
Oh, I would. And just a quick note, the book is called Deadwood Bound.
Oh, Deadwood. Okay, Deadwood Bound. Okay.
But yes, pretty dramatic.
Talk about you came from the Philippines. Talk about that a little.
Well, I'm an American, born and raised, but I happened to meet my wife through pen pals. We were pen pals back in the early 2000s, and so I decided to go over there, and we ended up getting married within 2 weeks of meeting each other. And then I decided to stay over there with her, and I had no idea it was going to be for nearly 20 years, but year after year went by, and we're kind of trying to put off holding on, trying to have a child until it was better that we got back home to the U.S., but things didn't quite work out. And so finally in 2019, we were blessed with a child. And then COVID hit. And it went. It's like a third world country over there, but things went from bad to worse. And, things started to become very authoritative. And as they're trying to figure things out as far as how to handle COVID, they pretty much locked everyone down to the point to where we couldn't even go outside, not even for fresh air. And, we were worried about going hungry because they're trying to figure out how they're going to allow people to the grocery stores. So for the first few weeks, we didn't know if we were going to go hungry. Luckily, it was the day before that I had went grocery shopping. I remember it was St. Patrick's Day 2020. And the following day is when they hit us with lockdowns. And after a few weeks, they came up with a system where we were allowed to, one person only per household was allowed to go out twice a week to go get food. And you had to have this pass with you. So I was getting thoughts of Germany, of Nazi Germany with papers and everything. And I was like, wow, this is getting crazy. And so yeah, we were pretty much confined to our homes, not allowed to go out. There are military checkpoints, and they would stop the transportation, and the guy out there, the soldier or whoever, would check to make sure we had our pass, and then we got our food and then went back home. And so it was really crazy. So I told my wife, I don't know if this is going to get any worse, so I think I better take our child home to the U.S. because this is getting crazy. Even Amnesty International and other organizations are speaking out against this. And so I worked with the embassy, and I got me and my son home, and that was back in November of 2020.
And your wife stayed?
Yeah, she couldn't come because, I was over there for so long because I wasn't able to get her a marriage visa. Because, you got to meet certain requirements for the visa. And, I'm an independent author. And so, yeah, I didn't really meet that. And that's why I chose to stay with her instead of, having the long distance relationship. But yeah, once we had the child, he had to come first.
Wow. So you chose South Dakota.
Yeah, I chose South Dakota for two reasons. One, because I was basically starting over, right? I was starting over from ground zero. I had been away from home in the U.S. for nearly 20 years, and so South Dakota is one of the least expensive states in the U.S. So I thought, okay, that's a good place to start. Also, a lot less populated, and one of the other number one reasons, no lockdowns, because I already had more than enough. And yeah, I believe in being socially responsible and everything, but I think things went way too far, taking away people's livelihoods and everything. And I just wanted to reestablish myself in a state that, in my opinion, they won't take away people's rights, basic rights.
I can understand that.
And what is that? I mean, everything I've heard and read, that's how it went down. South Dakota was responsible, but given different population realities and this and that, it was pretty close to normal life. Is that true?
Yep. From what I spoke with the people who live around here when we first got here, that was basically true. Because by the time we got over here, because we had stayed in California with a relative for a few months before we moved out here, and so by the time we got over here, things were starting to kind of normalize, but restaurants were still, and other places of business in California was still pretty much locked down. You couldn't eat in the restaurant and had to take it to go, and a lot of barbershops are closed down and stuff, except for the ones that said, I'm going to ignore it. They're not going to take away my livelihood. But besides that, things were starting to normalize a little bit. So I didn't know how much to the effect of what hit South Dakota until we got here, and I started talking to the locals, and they're like, yeah, we were pretty much untouched as far as lockdowns go. We didn't get our livelihoods taken away and such. And so I had to respect for the governor for that.
And that was Kristi Noem then, right?
At the time, yeah.
So, do you know, since you left? I mean, how did the Philippines fare in terms of death, and did all that lockdown stuff help them?
Well, we're seeing these studies now. I mean, I'm no expert. I can't bring up the data in my head, but we're seeing these things come out now where they were ineffective. They really were, every time I hear about it on the news or the radio shows I'm listening to, I pay attention because I was against it from the start, because the equivalent of the guy like Fauci, but he's the one in Sweden, and he's the one that one of the first ones to come out saying lockdowns are not the answer, and they're just going to create more problems than anything else.
Right.
And I think he's been proven right. And again, I'm no expert, but yeah, I think it cost a lot more, as far as everything from education to, kids' education to people taking their own lives because they couldn't provide for their families, some people. And I mean, just it created so many problems that I think, and as time goes on, we're learning that it was definitely the wrong decision to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's almost to the point where it's inarguable that it wasn't the best solution. I think it's also pretty inarguable that to this moment there's lasting repercussions, but we haven't talked about Deadwood. So we gotta, there's 3 iconic towns in the West. I think if you're not from the West, and there's people who say Tucson, where I live, was probably more violent than Tombstone, probably had more gunfights and this and that and all this. But the 3 are not in particular order, maybe Tombstone, Deadwood, and Dodge City, Kansas. And so talk about, do you live in Deadwood, or is it just the history piece that attracted you for the book?
No, we live about 5 hours away, and so we are in Mitchell, South Dakota, and but yeah, I just as an author, I came upon an event called Wild Deadwood Reads, and I looked into it, and then I was invited to be part of the anthology. So there's like a half a dozen authors who contribute. Each of them contribute a story in some way connected with Deadwood. And it's an anthology that Wild Deadwood Reads puts out every year. And so this year, it will be the first time my son and I will be visiting Deadwood, and it's in June on Father's Day weekend. And yeah, I'll be part of the book signing there, and we're looking really forward to it. But yes, for the past year, I've been doing some research, watching the Deadwood show, although, there are obvious differences, when they do take some creative license. But yeah, I really fell in love with the whole topic.
Now, this is, and I know you've published many books. This is not your first attempt at writing a book, and you've published many books, but this is your first book on Deadwood, and I know you plan to do more, and yet you were invited as a result of your first book to go up there and participate in Deadwood Reads.
That's right. I've been writing for several years in different genres, because it's kind of, constraining just to be in one, in my opinion. And so, I hopped around in different genres, but these past few years I was focusing on crime thrillers. And so I have a crime thriller book series. It's called the Riker Books series, crime thriller series. So it's a PI based out of LA, and his name is Riker. And yeah, so that's my series. And then when I heard of Deadwood and everything, and then I heard about the anthology, and it has to be connected, so I decided to link my book series to this story of Deadwood Bound. And so basically Riker finds out that he has family in South Dakota, and then because he doesn't know most of his family. He doesn't know his father's side at all, and his mother, he doesn't know that much about their family history, but he did find out through one of these ancestry sites that he has relatives in South Dakota. So he comes out to learn more, and then when he's in the cellar of his old grandparents' place, he stumbles upon a journal, and this journal is from his great-great-great-grandfather, so basically, long story short, he the guy is a bookseller, and with his covered wagon, he just goes around the American frontier selling books. Every few months, he's able to go home, which is in DeSmet, South Dakota, which is about an hour here from Mitchell. And I kind of incorporated Charles Ingalls just a little bit, and so Charles Ingalls was in DeSmet after he moved from Minnesota to DeSmet, South Dakota, the Ingalls family, and so I incorporated him just a little bit to be Dirk's friend. Dirk is the main character, the great-great-grandfather. Three greats, yeah, of Riker. So anyway, he finds the journal, he starts reading it, and so he decides to go up to Deadwood to do more investigating of what happened, because basically some what do they call them, road agents had kidnapped his wife on the prairie and taken her up to Deadwood. And usually in the past, what that meant, if women were taken up to Deadwood, it was not a good situation, if you know what I mean, for women.
Right.
And
it did not end well.
Yeah, and so I incorporated the real-life character of Al Swearengen, who owned the Gym Theater, And so it's a story around Swearengen and the Gem Theater. And so it's kind of like a historical fiction in a way. And so it's following. So basically it's going back and forth from Riker in present times to back in 1899 with the journal of his great-great-great-grandfather.
Interesting. Now, how did you do research for this? Because you can find a lot of information on it, but there's so many different paths to get that information. How did you go about doing your research?
Yeah, it can be surprisingly tough because we're dealing with, over 100 years ago, and it's not like, for the most part, they thought, oh, let's save so much information for future generations. So it is kind of difficult. So I obviously started with the TV show, which I thought was great, and then I just delve into as much history as I could, researching through different sources on the internet, and then getting some books. I found one on Al Swearengen's life and so forth, and of course you come across Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane and all them, and with the research, and but it was difficult finding out a lot of details about Al Swearengen, even though they did come out with this kind of short book, and his death, which did not happen in Deadwood, because you see, he built with it the Gem Theater. The town of Deadwood, as most people know, burned down a few times, and so his Gem Theater also burned down among those times. And so 1899 was the last time, the third and last time. So after it burned down for the third time in 1899, he pretty much said, okay, that's it. and he a couple of months later, he ended up leaving. But yes, his death was suspicious, and that was in Denver. But in the show, he dies in Deadwood, but that's really not true. They just take creative license. But yeah, so just to answer your question, I mainly focused on what pertained to my story. So after the general research, and then I would try to delve into characters like the Gem Theater, Al Swearengen, and whatever's going to make my story in alignment with truth while still having that fiction surrounding it.
Right. Perfect. All right, we're going to take our break.
Greetings, this is Stan Houston, and it's my privilege and my pleasure to be one of the distributors, the kind of founder-producer of this wonderful program called the Cowboy Up Podcast. Here's something I know for sure, that among the many people who are listening around the world, I know some of you would like to write a book. You've oftentimes said, I wish I could write a book. I know I'd love to write a book. And some of you would like to be on the radio. Well, you can do both. In fact, you can do both together. It is now possible to actually do a podcast, enjoy speaking and performing and storytelling, and from that, we can create a book. That's what my company, which is called, here we go, the What It Takes Radio Company, which is a podcasting and publishing company. And of course, the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network is a part of what we do. So if you would like to perhaps do exactly what Stephen and Russell get to enjoy doing every week, and that's have your own radio program to tell your story, we'd love to help you out. Or perhaps you're saying, is that really true that I don't have to write a book? I could actually just speak and perform it, and a book could be published. That's what we do. So why don't you reach out to me at stan@witradio.net. There we go, stan@witradio.net. 25 will be the year you don't not just survive, you thrive, and you finally write that book. You finally get on the radio.
Okay, now, Rico, I know that, from what you said, there's a lot of research you had to do for this book, but it's not as easy to find as you might think. And I guess my big question is, I know you watched the show. From the other research that you did, how did the show line up with the other research? Was it pretty similar, or did everybody have their own little opinion on things?
Well, yeah. So again, I thought the show was great, and it really helped me start that deep interest and all that. But yeah, I didn't go so deep into the other characters' lives that much because I knew Al Swearengen was going to be at the center of my story. And so the main difference was the fact that on the show they had him dying in Deadwood, and in real life it was in Denver, and I was able to track down a very small article that was published a day or two after his death, and that basically said, so because they had found his body on some railroad tracks, the back of his head had been bashed in, and so I think most people came to the conclusion that, he was probably train hopping, and he got hit by the train, and so that's how he died. But and he was down on his luck, they're saying, and he was like trying to get some work and mining or something at that point. But what's interesting is, and what they don't say in the show is, he had a twin brother. And so what's interesting is a couple of months before Al died, someone had shot his brother in the head. This was in a different state, I can't remember what, and they shot him 4 times in the head. And remarkably, he survived, but he was obviously, it left him, not doing well health-wise. But some people believe it was mistaken identity because, Al Swearengen had wronged a lot of people, and he had supposedly a lot of enemies, and he wasn't a good guy. I mean, there are some records that with his wife, he even pimped out his wife and beat her so much. And so I tend to also believe that maybe it was mistaken identity with his twin brother, and then whoever it was caught up with him in Denver and got him. That's just, I mean, I don't know if it'll ever be proven, but that's just what I tend to believe as well.
So here's my question. I've asked other people in the past who've been on that know something about Deadwood, and the show was such a success. As a sidelight, some folks in the TV business who were fans of Deadwood told me that they stopped doing it, not because it wasn't successful and well received, but because it was so expensive to produce. I don't know, that's true or not true. But here's my question. When Deadwood came out, it was very, within some of the folks that I know, it was very controversial because, instead of Roy Rogers and his white hat and his perfect language and his very clear good ethics, et cetera, I use Roy Rogers as one example. They really hated the language, and they really hated I think it's indisputable. There were some real bad characters, and there was some real, obviously these towns were violent. I ask, some people say, no, that language is absolutely historically accurate. This is the way they spoke at that time and in those kinds of places. And other people have said, no, that's just purely modernizing an old story. Do you have a thought on that, or is it just sort of lost to the history?
Yeah, I don't know if we could ever prove 100%, but I would really believe that was the case with the hard way of living and everything, and it just seems like that would be the case, and so that's another reason I respected the show, is it just seemed authentic, and especially my favorite character, even though, I mean, just as far as the show goes and the performances, Al Swearengen, what's his name, Ian McShane is the one who played him, and
right.
He just did an excellent job.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of cursing, but you gotta it's just, I think it adds authenticity in just my opinion as a storyteller, and I mean, every time he came on screen, you look forward to those scenes because he's just such a great bad guy
you need a great bad guy. You do.
Yeah.
And my intuition, and I have no informed opinion, but my intuition is you're right. I mean, just why would they have been speaking, carefully? Yeah, well,
yeah.
I mean, it was the Wild West after all. They were shooting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to be rude if you're getting ready to shoot someone.
Yeah.
I think is how that works. In
You're
fact,
carrying a gun to work.
I pulled something up, and I had to print it off. It just amused me so much. And it said, from its debut, Deadwood drew attention for its extensive profanity. The historical accuracy and dramatic intent of its use of obscenities has been the subject of controversy and discussion. The F word has been said about 43 times in the first hour of the show, and it's reported the entire series had a total count of 2,980 F words and an average of 1.56 of these words per minute of dialogue. Oh my goodness!
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was a point of contention. That's funny. Somebody had the time to count the F words. That's great.
Well, thank goodness for AI.
It reminds me of Scarface. They counted how many times Al Pacino's characters said the F word. But so yeah, it does give Scarface a run for his money. But I think it fit the story great.
It's funny. So
yeah.
You know, you didn't really like Al Swearengen, but you thought he was interesting. And one of the things I read about him, not only was he a pimp, but he actually owned a house of ill repute, if you will. House of prostitution.
Yes. So, to my understanding, so he did. Yeah, it was the gym theater, had prostitution, it had gambling, and it even had fights, so boxing type fights, and I think anything he was. You gotta give him credit that he was had quite an entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, so he did have all kinds of things going on at this place, and that's why he was the number one place in Deadwood at the time.
Well, it's interesting. I'm reading a book right now called Bob Sharp's Cowboy Cattle Country. And it's kind of a respected book about cattle ranching on either side of the border, Arizona and Mexico, and around Depression era and on. And he talks very dispassionately about the fact that the cowboys came into the towns for drinking and women, and these weren't dates they were going on, and it was just very much like that was the solution to the lifestyle, and Deadwood's not going to be all that different.
Yeah, and so yeah, he was there for the entertainment, and also to provide the entertainment for all those people coming out to try to, strike gold. Because that's why they came up with Deadwood, right? Is because they found gold in those Black Hills, and so yeah, his mindset was also let me service all these people out here trying to dig for gold and give them a place to spend their money.
Yeah, give them what they want. I mean, it's rule one of retailing.
Yeah, I would say. Okay, so now Seth Bullock had an interesting background as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Talk about that, because I thought that was kind of fun.
Well, again, I didn't do a great amount of research on him because, Calamity Jane does pop up a couple of scenes in my book for just to add some humor, but and in the show she has such a mouth on her too. But and according to my research, though, she did have quite a mouth on her. I didn't delve into it as much, but yeah, she was quite a drinker and frequenter of the saloons. But yeah, with Seth Bullock, he was interesting also, and I think, where did he come from? He came from, I forgot which state that he had come from before going to Deadwood and then later becoming sheriff. But when I do get up there in June, I look forward to looking at his hotel and checking it, because that's one of the last few original buildings left, because it's made of brick, because since the town burned down a couple of times, or at least since its heyday, that's one of the structures that still remains from way back in those times. So I find that fascinating.
I did write it down. Did you say the third and final fire was 1899? Do I have that right?
Well, I was talking about, as far as the Gem Theater is concerned, yes. But I think they had at least one or two fires after that. But I can't tell you that because my story of Deadwood Bound, the fictional story, but it also the climax of it centers also around the real life event of the Gem Theater burning down for the final time in December of 1899. Yeah,
I got it. Wild Bill Hickok, is he in the book?
No, he's not in the book. I wouldn't have liked to, but again, as an author and storyteller, I don't want to just throw someone in there. They have to really contribute to what's really going on, right?
Sure.
And so,
sure.
And also, Wild Bill, he was only there to my understanding, for a couple of days before he got shot, right? He wasn't there for that long at all. So in 1899, that's where I had to center everything around 1899, because that's when the Gem Theater burned down for the last time. And so I had to base everything on that, including the whole thing with the Ingalls family, because at first I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have the main character come from Minnesota because that's where they lived. But then when I did my research, I found out, no, at that point in 1899, the Ingalls had already came and moved down to DeSmet, South Dakota. So, yeah, I had to basically center it around there. And so, of course, by that time, Hickok was long dead.
Right. So many big names.
Calamity Jane was still there.
I don't know the geography. I've actually only been in the Dakotas once. Where is Medora relative to Deadwood? Do you know?
Did you say Medora?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Okay. The reason I ask is it's sort of the birthplace in a way of Jew ranching. It was where Teddy Roosevelt was at his Maltese Cross Ranch, and I was just curious because I don't know the geography very well. I mean, everybody loves the Black Hills. I don't think I've ever heard anybody who doesn't love it. And of course, Mount Rushmore is one of those things you got to see in life. And my one trip, no, I've been there twice, but it is a beautiful, interesting, very different part of the country. I think it just, but I haven't been to Deadwood, so I got to get there.
Yeah, that'd be nice if you come on down on Father's Day weekend. There's it seems like it's going to be a trifecta, because there's going to be Wild Deadwood reads, plus it's Father's Day weekend, so it's a good place for people to take their dads, and also there's going to be Wild Bill days going on at the same time, coinciding. So I guess during this Wild Bill days, they're going to have reenactments, they're going to have free concerts, they're going to have car shows. So lots going on this weekend, on the weekend of Father's Day weekend.
Wow, it's going to be hard to get a hotel. And there's gambling in Deadwood, right? That's a gambling town. So you've begun the Riker series, which is crime drama, crime thriller.
Yeah.
And you write in a variety of genres. Is there somewhere where somebody can get access to the variety of things that you've done, or do they just go to Amazon and throw in Rico Lamoureux? You might be the only one who's an author who's got that name. You're not John Smith.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some books on Amazon, but my main focus is on my own website of RikerBooks.com.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Perfect.
Yeah, so I have everything up there that I've published, and on RikerBooks.com. And I did want to say that for your listeners, I have a special deal of 50% off, because it is a pay subscriber program. So if you choose, I mean, you could, there's an option to be a regular free subscriber, but for the pay subscribers, they get the backlist to everything. So full access to the website and all the books that are on it. And so if any of your listeners are interested, if they go to RikerBooks.com/cowboyup, they will see a 50% discount.
Nice.
To be able to get into the website and have access to Deadwood Bound, all the books coming up, with and all the backlog of books that I've written in the past.
Oh, wow. Very cool. So Riker, RIKER, books.com/cowboyup if they want to do that. But otherwise, they can go and see the whole list at RikerBooks.com.
Correct.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. God,
Sure.
we didn't even ask you to do that. You just volunteered.
Well, thank you. And, if there's any way, I always think I'm going to go do these things and then somehow Dude Ranch life gets in the way. But that sounds like huge fun. I better book now, though. It sounds like that's going to be a very hard ticket to get, Deadwood, at Father's Day. You've got quite a few things going in, not a huge town. So, all right. Well, thank you, Riker.
Rico, thank you.
Yes, Rico Lamoureux, RikerBooks.com, RIKER.
Thank you, Rico.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure.
Russell, I have to admire authors that are trying to take a topic like Deadwood that has been, let's say a couple of things have been written about it, movies have been filmed, television series, and they find their own level of interest and they find their own set of facts. And that shows me a level of research that is not common in the world we live in. It's not AI. It's someone going through the diligent effort of doing things, and it stands out, and I think it's remarkable.
I was going to say something else, but it's kind of interesting because you said AI, and we're in the beginnings. And I was reading, literally coincidentally this morning, a publishing contract, a contract with a publisher, and it was talking about they're going to run the manuscripts that come in through the AI. And if there's more than 3 to 5% that comes up AI generated, you're out.
Yeah.
And I thought already, this is where we are, and it's they've already the entertainment community's been to Trump talking about you got to do something about limiting AI as it pressures our industry, and man, we're at the beginning of the battle, boy.
Well, there's something to be said for the ability to think and be original.
Yeah, there is, but man, I'll tell you, when they've already got it in the publishing contracts, it's a coming.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and thank you very much for being a part of the Cowboy Up Podcast. People, players, and programming. That's right. You are a part of what we do, and so we're welcoming you. Would you like to be on the program? Perhaps you would like to make that happen, or you've got some comments or some things you'd like to suggest. Maybe you could suggest somebody who maybe even you yourself, who could be on the program. So why don't you reach out to Stephen and Russell at the Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com, the Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. And remember, we come your way from the White Stallion Ranch, the historic, wonderful experience of the White Stallion Ranch in Tucson, Arizona. And it's getting a little bit warmer in the Arizona region. However, we are open all summer, and we have just right adventures for you to enjoy a inner cowboy experience. So why don't you go to whitestallion.com, whitestallion.com, and they'll fix you up in a place that you can enjoy. Family reunion, friends get together right here in Tucson. Or if you want to go a little further north where the weather is a little bit more moderate, well, the True Ranch Connection can find a place for you there too. So reach out to them at whitestallion.com. That's whitestallion.com. All the best and blessings to you. Enjoy the summertime that's upon us. Ride safe, walk tall, do good work, tip your hat. It's the cowboy way. Till next time, bye for now.